Sharon King-Chai,
Hello.
award-winning author and illustrator. Thank you very much for your time today on Entrepreneur Middle East and for joining us. Sharon, I find the multiculturalism of your journey quite wonderful. You were born in Australia to Chinese Malaysian parents and later moved to London after your studies.
Yes.
I feel like having such an experience in and of itself removes certain biases from your mind. And I think creatives can do with that a lot more. But in the very human possibility where, ego and prejudice does sort of pop up in your mind. And now with these also the added pressure of living up to digital trends, how do you stay true to your creative vision when things threaten to disrupt your creative process?
I think I just try to be really open-minded about things. Like at the moment, I'm entirely freelance now. I used to work as a designer and be employed by different companies. But now I just go where my heart takes me, and I just choose projects and different mediums and curiosity. I'm also a mum to 2 children as well, and often I'm like, this is my life, and I'm trying to go deeper into like all the different sort of threads that that presents me, and I'm just trying to be open-minded. And I think that what I really love is exploring and just having conversations and connections. For me, the most important thing in my life is just connecting with the people and the things around me and just hearing people's stories. And so, I think like the way that I try and like do my work is just by trying to kind of, like I'm a sort of like open sponge, just trying to absorb stories and trying to like, whether it's things like, the digital landscape, AI, and how everything's going to affect us. Like, it is quite, if you look at it from one perspective, it could be quite a sort of, worrying thing. Like the other day, I also do greeting cards as well as books. And so I was doing some typography, and my husband saw what I was doing. He's like, you can use AI for it. So he actually took a photo of what I was doing, and then he got AI to like generate it for me. And then he showed it to me. I was like, nope, this is all wrong. It just felt too polished and smooth. Whereas I love like everything that I do has to have like that sort of human hand touch, because I think for me, what I really value is just that sort of that marking, that sort of sense of integrity of craft. And I think that like in all the work that I do, like I always try and find the soul of it. And so it's, like the way that I work is, so basically I grew up studying design. And so I always start when I do like a visual piece, thinking about shapes and composition. And then I might, think about color. So I do use computers for that, but then I always bring back texture. So that's like, I use so many different ways, different mediums to experiment. Like, for example, I do a book with Julie Donaldson called Counted Creatures. There's some sheep in it. And actually, when I was creating the sheep, my daughter was weaning at the time. So I was presented with all these different foods, and one of them was blackberries. And she was like baby, so she just threw it on the floor. And so I picked up this blackberry from the floor, and I was about to like go, I was looking at it, and there were all these amazing little lumps and bumps of this blackberry. And I thought, this is an interesting texture. So I dipped it in paint and rolled around a piece of paper, and I made this like really beautiful sort of lumpy sort of texture. And then I use that as the wall for the sheep in our book. And so I feel like, just trying to kind of, think differently. Like I feel like, I just like to challenge things and think, what I love about art is just, referencing life and everything around me to kind of find the soul and the heart of a project. And then I hope that people connect to it.
Absolutely. Can AI take a piece of something off the floor and create texture out of it? Absolutely not. I am glad you did bring up AI, but I will sort of keep that towards the end of our conversation.
Yes.
Sharon, you do a lot of children's books illustrations, and I was thinking about this. I don't know what I would have been had I not seen the illustrations that came along with, say, the Enid Blyton books I read when I was 6. That is still fresh in my memory. And those weren't even colored, they were just black and white. Now, the work that you do is so much different from what we sort of, the creative work that we come across in our teens and our adulthood helps us feel seen, whereas what you do helps shape minds to an extent. But there is also a commercial aspect to your job at the end of the day. How do you balance that sort of responsibility of, being someone who helps shape a young mind with your commercial responsibilities? How do you balance that?
Essentially, I don't really think of it, when I'm creating it. Like for me, I kind of do it almost for myself, like, because I guess, I've had all those experiences, of being the child, being that teen, being the adult. And, also reading those unobliged books. And also what I really love about the unobliged books was that she always had her signature. And I think I remember it.
Exactly.
And I don't know why, but for some reason that always stayed with me because it kind of felt like almost like that was her artwork. And that was like her signature just to give her sort of personal touch. And I actually do that now. I think I was so influenced by that. I do that in my art, in my books and pretty much everything I do now. And, I think like it's almost through my filter. Like I'm not sort of consciously thinking this is my responsibility to do these things, but actually it's like actually what means something to me, how do I feel about these things? And I think like every time every step of the way I'm kind of making sure that I feel good about what I'm doing. And it's not with an audience in mind, it's just more about for myself. And then I'm hoping that that will then translate into, when it connects with others later, that they might also feel that sense of sense of my process.
Yes. I love that you mentioned that you're not necessarily thinking about the end user while you're in the midst of that creative process, because it's a nice segue to what I want to ask you next. I think the children's illustration space has been quite insulated from these social media trends, and long may it stay that way.
Yes.
But there are a lot of creative folks who find that social media is perhaps a great avenue to sort of showcase their work. But with that comes increased visibility. Do you perhaps feel that being visible has not allowed certain creative folks to be vulnerable in their craft? And I'm asking that because your work isn't necessarily that affected by social media and digital trends. And has that allowed you to be more vulnerable in your craft? And how do you see that dichotomy?
Yeah, that's a really interesting question because, I think that, that sort of vulnerability and it's like how much of yourself and your story do you tell? And I think that depends on, the showcase of the project that you're trying to connect. And I feel that, actually as a mother now and as I'm finding more experiences in life and, I'm thinking that I actually do want to go deeper. And that means, digging more into my own personal stories, which I think is a really sort of, I think it's like, different parts of my career have sort of tapped into different parts of the story. When I was first started as an illustrator, it was more about like, creating my own characters. Whereas I think actually as I shift and I become, a bit older and have a bit more sort of, life behind me, I actually bring the focus a bit more into myself. And actually it's interesting to say that because at this very moment, like after I've got another picture book I'm working on at the moment, after that I'm not entirely sure, but I feel like I do want to go deep and, find be a bit more vulnerable. And I think that part of it is, investigating more about who I am and how I relate to the world. Because I guess for me, it's like, I am a certain way because of the way that I was brought up. And it's something that, as I have children, I'm a bit more conscious about in their sort of responses to things and realizing actually the reason why they're like that is because I'm the way I am. That's because of the way I was brought up. And so it's something that I do, like I'm not sort of consciously sort of thinking, like when I use like Instagram, for example, I do use it. But I'm there more to sort of showcase my professional side. So I, might be able to share something like I'm at the Emirates Literature Festival and how fantastic it is. But then, I guess, if the story of my next project that, I'm going to be involved in needs me to be a bit more vulnerable. And I think that's probably where I do need to go next, just to kind of, there's also that sort of balance of being a bit of an artist as well.
Yes.
And I think that's very where I want to lean into a bit more, just going a bit more into the art side. Because I think being an illustrator and doing, commercial books is different. Like, I do some books for other authors as well. And that's a very different experience to creating my own book and finding the next story of what I want to share. I think for me it's really important because I kind of take a long time to do my books. And I have to like really feel invested in the story and to feel like it's really worth that time, because I don't want to go and produce lots and lots of books that have like a really huge output. I just want to do things that feel worthy and important, and I can find the meaning in the story that will hopefully connect with other people as well.
Yeah. I think creatives leave a part of their soul in a little bit of their soul in every work they do, and that's something that those who think that AI can be creative perhaps not are perhaps not able to understand.
Yeah.
Let's sort of address that elephant in the creative room.
Yeah.
You know, in addition to this very obvious, unnecessary development where people think that AI can be creative is happening, simultaneously there is this, having echo chambers is perhaps the worst thing that a creative person can have. You don't necessarily need to have yes men around you all the time.
Yeah.
And those who are using AI for their creative work are also getting a bit of a pat on the back, virtual pat on the back. ChatGPT will tell you, "Oh my God, amazing prompt, great prompt."
Yeah.
What is your observation about this development, and how do you see it? Do you see it changing the creative landscape at all? And how do you think the human creatives need to be navigating it better?
Well, I think that for me, I think that we can use AI as a tool, and I think like maybe it might help us work a bit faster. Like maybe kind of, if you're working on something, like might help you just kind of cover, like do a bit research, for example, quicker. But like I think it's really important to still do the work, like to imbue it with the soul, because I think that I think you can tell the difference between things that have been generated by AI and that it's so there's such different experiences.
Yeah.
And I think by all means, like I use AI, like ChatGPT, just to rewrite my emails because I might just like get my key points. Okay, can you make this sound nicer?
Yeah.
But I think that if we use it as a tool, I think it can help us fast, speed up the process.
Yeah.
But I think what's really important is the whole editing process, and like every sort of step of the way, you're still being conscious of the sort of attachment you have to the project and how much you give to it. And I think like for me, it's really important that you have that soul that AI doesn't give a project because it's very lacking.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, with that, we come to the end of the interview. Sharon, thank you very much for having joined us on Entrepreneur Middle East.
Thank you so much for having me.